Welcome, and we're so glad and grateful that you could join us today. We're going to be talking about executive functioning skills, what they are, their effects, and strategies to improve them. My name is Anna Zerfus, and I am the Regional Parent Navigator for Stone Soup Group in the interior, and I cover the interior and northern parts of Alaska. And then my co-teacher is Terry Manning.
Good morning. I am the Special Education Professional Development Coordinator for the Fairbanks School District. And so Anna and I get the opportunity to collaborate to bring these parent learning hours, which we both enjoy quite a bit. And we hope that you enjoy today too. So in talking about the executive function skills, even though we come from a special education background, executive function skills are really a human issue, that we all have executive function, deal with executive functioning. And we have some areas that are strengths for us and some areas that are challenges for us. So as we're going through this, hopefully you'll be able to do some self-reflection also.
So our learning objectives today are to define what executive functioning skills are, what they look like, and strategies to help improve executive functions, one of which is caffeine. So what are executive functions? They are a set of mental skills that help the brain organize and act on information. They give people the ability to plan, organize, remember things, prioritize, pay attention, and get started and finish tasks. They help people use information and experiences from the past to solve current problems.
That's one definition that we could choose from for executive functions. When you look at the literature and the research, there are different ways that people define it, but this seems to be one of the ones that is comprehensive.
So in the field of neuroscience, they are the one that gives us the term of executive skills. And they are brain-based skills necessary to execute those tasks through daily life. So executive functions are found in the frontal lobe, which is also connected to, of course, the other parts of the brain. And so whenever there is a disruption to the frontal lobe, there can be disruption in the executive functioning. So if you have like a stroke or meningitis, if you have a traumatic brain injury, anything like that, that can either swell or affect the pathways will lead to a disruption. Now we have a cool video for you guys from Harvard Child Developmental Center, and it gives a nice overview of the executive functioning skills and how they impact our lives. And we would love if you would share an aha moment or golden nugget you see from watching the video.
Science tells us that minds are built, not born. And at the center of this dynamic architecture are a set of skills called executive function and self-regulation.
Children's self-regulation and executive function are key ingredients in their lifetime performance. It's not just about learning language or learning numbers or learning colors.
We have to be able to work effectively with others, with distractions, with multiple demands. These actually are skills that contribute to the productivity of the American workforce.
Don't do that! Justin, look at your shapes. What should you have done next?
Educators, I think, are looking for just this sort of thing. And when we describe what we mean by executive function, they say, yes, that's it. That's exactly, the problem. These kids, they can tell me these rules, but they can't actually use them.
What's this?
A toolbox.
A toolbox.
What is executive function?
Safety goggles.
Safety goggles.
Probably the best way to think about it is sort of like an air traffic control system in the brain. Just like an air traffic control system has to manage lots of airplanes going on lots of runways and really exquisite timing and so on, a child has to manage a lot of information and avoid distractions. We really think of it as involving working memory and inhibitory control and mental flexibility. Take a situation where a child is having to take turns. So first of all, the child has to have inhibitory control. The child has to be able to stop whatever he or she is doing and let the other child take a turn.
Cute.
But when it's your turn again, you also have to remember what it is you're supposed to be doing. So that pulls on working memory. If the children who are taking the turns after you do something unpredictable, you have to be able to adjust what you're going to do next. And that requires mental flexibility. Children who are struggling with these capacities often look like children who just aren't paying attention, or children who are deliberately not controlling themselves.
If you don't have self-regulation, you act out and the teacher puts you in timeout, and so then you miss part of the learning that's going on, and then you are more upset because you're behind, and so you act out, and so you get this downward spiral.
How does executive function develop?
7, and +4.
In little children, and even in the infant and toddler years, you begin to see the roots of executive functioning skills. What's going on in our brains is unbelievably intricate and complicated.
The prefrontal cortex, or the front third of the brain, is important for executive function. But it's more than just prefrontal cortex. This region doesn't act alone. It's involved in controlling your behavior through its interactions with all other parts of the brain. The brain goes from a situation where you've got nearest neurons communicating very strongly with each other and ignoring the rest of the brain, to these widespread networks that are connecting these different areas. Executive function changes over the life course. It improves radically over the first few years.
I got a match prime.
It continues to improve throughout adolescence. It's not until early adulthood that you have the adult-type networks that are very strongly activated that connect different brain regions together.
Let's take notes.
Also, we believe that executive functions can be trained.
It's just like going to the gym. So the more you practice in these areas, the stronger the capacity is likely to become, because you're helping to strengthen those neural connections.
You're at 24.
Slowly but surely, you're going to be able to step back, and that child's going to go into the world with these skills where they can get along with other people, change rules, and they can be flexible, and they can accomplish new things, and they're unafraid.
I got bit by my dog in my arm. Oh dear.
If we don't learn these skills during the childhood and adolescent years when they're coming online, we are really ill-equipped as an adult to hold a job, to maintain a marriage, to raise children, to get along with each other, to basically be part of a civil society.
You're okay.
So do we have any aha or golden nuggets you obtained from watching the video?
For me, I think I don't know if it would be an aha, but it certainly would explain, like when my son and daughter were younger. I mean, they're 29 and 31 now, but when they were much younger, there was a lot more meltdowns. And as I've gotten older, that's gotten considerably less, to almost nothing. So they've learned as they've gotten older, they've increased their self, regulatory type skills quite a bit. So it doesn't entail this physical screaming, meltdown in public. Now it's, let's go ahead and talk about this, why you're upset, and talk through it.
Which is really true. It's understandable because we know from the research that the brain doesn't really fully mature until 25, 26 years old. And if you have an individual who is delayed developmentally, it could be much later than that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yep.
So we also have in the chat from Tika, the more a child uses the skills, they develop them better and can apply them. Absolutely. And then from Cindy and George, it's a long, long road, and there are so many things that can influence the outcome. Seems like mindfulness practices might help. Absolutely. And we'll briefly talk about how stress can definitely add to dysfunction. Thank you.
So some of the skills that we talk about when we talk about executive functioning are planning, organization, time management, and working memory, metacognition, inhibitory control, emotional control, being able to pay attention, being able to start and stop tasks when asked, flexibility, and being goal-directed and being persistent. And of course, there are a different number of skills depending on which author you're talking about, but these are some of the pretty critical thinking and behavior executive functioning skills. Great. So first, Terry.
Okay, so when we're looking at planning, so this is like the first one for the thinking skills. So when you're planning and having that ability to create a roadmap to reach the goal or to complete a task. So as adults, we look at that all the time. The next one, organization, the ability to design and maintain systems for keeping track of information and materials. Looking at time management, that's the capacity to estimate how long it's going to take something to be done, how to allocate that time, and then how to stay within the time limits and deadlines. When we're looking at working memory, that's the ability to hold information in your mind while performing complex tasks. So it incorporates the ability to draw on past learning or experience to apply to the situation at hand or to a project into the future.
Whenever I look at working memory, I always think of a Rubik's Cube because you really have to pay attention to what you're doing and keep it in your head while you're doing it.
And metacognition is looking at your learning. So looking at the ability to observe how you solve problems, and includes that self-monitoring and the evaluative skills. So it's really about thinking about your thinking. So what is it that you're doing, and are you asking your self questions to be able to move forward? So now we're going to look at some of the behavioral skills. So response inhibition, and that's the capacity to think before you act. And Kim, you were talking about that, it sounds like, with your kids, being able to, and then also that emotional control, being able to manage the emotions so that you can achieve your goals and complete the tasks and be able to keep your behavior in the direction you want it to be. Sustained attention, the capacity to attend to a situation and a task in spite of distractibility, fatigue, or boredom. Task initiation, that's the ability to begin the task without undue procrastination and in a timely manner. Flexibility, that ability to revise plans in the face of obstacles, setbacks, new information, or mistakes, or somebody else changing your plans for you. And it involves the adaptability to changing conditions, whatever they are. And goal-directed persistence, that's the capability or capacity to drive, to follow through the completion of a goal and not put it off. Because there are other demands or competing interests, and not procrastinating. To everybody, that just because we don't have it right now, or our children don't have it right now, it doesn't mean that it can't be taught. And that is at school and at home. So that's the nice part about it. Also looking at the fact that every child is different, but I will give you a resource a little bit later, and it talks about enhancing and practicing executive functioning skills as part of the resource at the end. And it's really great because what it does is it tells you kind of what they should be able to do during a certain age span, and then gives you activities to be able to practice. But if your child is functioning developmentally at a lower level, you can go back and see what skills they need to have strengthened. So yes, I'm glad that you shared that, Bobby, that we're all developing. And even when we're older, and if there's an executive functioning skill that we think, we need to change, we have that ability to practice too. The key for us is that we are older and we've had more experience. We have to remember that our children don't have the same life experiences that we do. And we really have to be intentional about training them, teaching them, giving them opportunities to practice. And sometimes that's hard because coming from the point of view of you're doing that to make me mad versus, oh, you're doing that because this is where you are developmentally. And there's a fine line at times. You think, oh, you're doing it on purpose because you're just being a turkey. But you as the adult have to tease out, is that really what it is? Is it because you want to make my life miserable, or you just don't want to do what I tell you? Or is it you don't have the skills yet? Is it a skills thing versus a performance thing? And keeping that really helped me in my practices to when I'm looking at a kiddo with behavior, is really being reflective about, okay, what's really happening here, and not taking it personally, but also holding kids accountable for as much as they are able to do. So just because a student has a disability does not mean that they get a free pass on everything. You know, we want to train them because we want everybody to be as independent as possible. And that's what executive function skills is all about, is helping kids be as independent learn how to be as independent as possible. And let's go ahead and go on to the next video, please.
Josh is a 6th grade student who has executive functioning issues. Executive functions work together to help the brain organize and act on information. Watch Josh's day to see what some of our own students have to deal with. Think of executive functions as what the chief executive officer of a company must do: analyze, organize, decide, and execute. Around the time of puberty, the frontal part of the cortex of the brain matures, allowing individuals to perform these skills. Some students' brains may take longer to mature, meaning that these functions continue to pose difficulties to them. It's 7 a.m. Josh is about to leave the house. He knows he's forgetting something, but what is it? Ah, that's it. It's his cleats for his soccer game. He runs back in the house to grab them, but ends up forgetting his backpack while running to catch the bus. The executive functions present are organization and working memory. It's 11 a.m. and Josh is struggling in class. His teacher is asking questions about the previous night's homework that Josh didn't complete. He forgot to check Google Classroom or write any notes. The executive functions present or organizing and focusing. 12:10, lunchtime, Josh's favorite part of the day. During lunch, he talks too loud and tends to annoy his friends. He's been in the hall even though he's been asked 3 times to leave. The executive functions present are self-monitoring and controlling impulses. 12:50, Josh's teacher has explained the class's next task verbally and has written it down on the board. Josh is still having trouble getting started though, and his laptop is open when others are working. The teacher explains the expectations a second and third time to Josh before he actually starts. The executive functions present are shifting focus, setting priorities, and starting tasks. 7 o'clock. After a lot of pushing from his mom, Josh finally sits down to do homework, but he doesn't know where to start. Instead of doing his English chapter questions or Pearson homework due tomorrow, he surfs the web for a science topic that's due for his project next week. The executive functions present are setting priorities, starting tasks, and sustaining attention. 11:30 p.m. It's way past Josh's bedtime and he's exhausted. He tries to sleep, but he can't shut off his brain. He's worrying about disappointing his teachers because he never completes his homework, and he cannot follow what is going on in his classes. The executive functions present are regulating alertness and keeping emotions in check. It is extremely common for students that struggle with learning and attention issues to also have problems with executive functions. Executive functions are the brain's self-management system. Issues with executive functions can make it hard to complete schoolwork and everyday tasks. Differentiation and special accommodations can help make a difference to students like Josh.
So not all students who have executive function issues are receiving services through special education. So there may be a child who has a disability that doesn't qualify for special education support, but they may qualify for accommodations through a 504 plan. So again, this isn't just a special education issue, it crosses the lifespan. Okay, so when we're looking at planning, Anna and I were talking about, we're doing home stuff here, but we also wanted to show what was going on, what could also be going on at school. And then just also realizing that this is one little strategy. There are lots of strategies, and you may have other strategies that you've used that are even more effective than these. It's really about being open to different strategies that meets the child's need. So when we're looking at school, they may have a project and they don't have the necessary materials to get started. And then at home, they may be late due to not picking their clothes out the night before. So do you have any, if just thinking to your own kids, have you had an issue with them getting to the car so you can leave because they're still trying to figure out what they're going to wear? I mean, sometimes I have that issue myself if I don't put my clothes out the night before. So having that nightly checklist of things that you need to have done to get ready to be able to leave in the morning. So being able to plan ahead so that you can be organized, which leads us into organization. So at school, it may look like that they lose important papers and possessions. That a lot of times it's that desk that is the bottomless pit and you don't know what's in there, and neither does the kiddo. At home, it could be having that messy room and just not having a place for all the things. So one way to deal with that would be to model where to put things and practice. And from the adult point of view, realizing that it's going to take practice. You may say, go clean your room. And that is like this big void. So you may have to show what you mean a clean room looks like. And you might have to have a checklist too, a picture schedule of this is what you do with this, giving them the cues that they need to be able to do that, to meet your expectations of cleaning their messy room. And also routines help. If with the things that you can, have a routine. If it's going in and cleaning the room, it means picking everything up off the floor, that's what they do every night before they go to bed. That's going to be helpful for them to be able to be successful. And we want to build success so that kids are feeling like they can do stuff and empower them, and this will help them grow their independence. And then time management. So at school, it may look like they're having trouble figuring out how to do a task in the amount of time that's required. Hopefully the teacher is helping set that out for them so that you can also support that at home. They may have trouble getting their homework done because they want to play video games, they want to visit with their friends, they just want to chill for a little bit. So having that time to get all that stuff in, but then homework doesn't get done because that wasn't in their schedule. So creating a schedule of activities for them, knowing that for many of these, you are going to be their frontal lobe. You are going to have to model and direct because they don't have that capacity. They may not have that capacity at that point. So you are going to be helping with this a lot, and it may be challenging, and especially when we're all at home right now and we're with each other all the time. It is challenging necessarily to keep that last fuse from igniting. So when Tika said, my child failed to qualify for special education, but we're still struggling with all of this. So looking at the teacher having concerns when she enters school. So, and knowing this, being able to share this with the teacher is going to be very helpful too. So that you can say, these are the areas that we're working on. These have been challenges. She has not qualified for special education as having a disability, but you can talk about maybe needing accommodations. So I would request a 504 meeting to determine, it's still an eligibility process, but you can have that conversation. So looking at working memory, that getting and taking hold of information that's coming in. At home, it's like they don't remember what to do. You've given them 3 tasks and only 3 tasks to do. And why the heck can't they remember? You know, and you want this done every day. Put your backpack in your room, go ahead and get a snack, and then start your homework. And it may be that they just don't remember all of them. So again, chunking it into small pieces, having a visual schedule, taking all of that. There's only a certain amount of space we have in our brain. So what can we do so that we're not eating it up with things that we could make a routine? So routines are extremely important, especially with working memory. And then metacognition, that school, they may ask for help before they try to solve a problem on their own. We call this learned helplessness. And we definitely do not want to encourage learned helplessness. At home, it may be that they want somebody to be with them to do everything so they don't do it incorrectly, or that they don't have to hear that they did it incorrectly. So a strategy for this would be modeling a task and talk out loud so they can hear the process you're going through, because eventually we want them to question themselves. Do I have everything to start this activity? When they're doing the activity, you know, what do I need to look at next? So it's all the questions that we just take for granted because we ask ourselves. They haven't learned that. And so they may have heard it, somebody may have taught it to them, but it has to be practiced.
Now we move into some of the emotional mental stuff with response inhibition. And at school, this can look like they may have a difficult time waiting their turn, and what kid doesn't? And at home, they may get upset when a parent won't pay attention right away. So a strategy for that one could be Also modeling and playing games with other children that require them to wait their turns so that they get that in their brain. An example of this could be like Chutes and Ladders or Uno, or, you know, and even as they get older, chess. It could also be helpful for improving their concentration and their patience, because it requires the game, you know, gives the player to be constantly thinking about that next move. With their emotional control, they may overreact to small problems, and they may get upset when asked to do something at home. And they may, you know, have those either temper tantrums or escalations because they don't have the ability to control their emotions. So a good strategy is, when they're not upset, talk about and role play how to deal with those emotions and what those emotions feel like in the moment, so that, you know, more and more as you talk about it, they'll understand what they're feeling and they'll be able to control what they're feeling. Then we have sustained attention. At school, this may look like they're having a difficult time listening to stories read aloud. Wow, I went all the way to the end. They may have a difficult time listening to long explanations at home. And another, you know, this works the same as some of the earlier issues, is chunking those directions, having the visual schedules, being able to give them, you know, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is what it looks like, so that they can look at that and they can keep their attention on it. Task initiation. They may need reminders to get started, and sometimes they'll need several reminders to get started. And at home, they may need reminders to get started on chores, homework, items to do. And so timers and checklists can be very helpful in that area. Then we have flexibility. In school, it may be easy, they may be easily upset by changes in the plan and routines. We have, you know, if they have transition issues going from class to class or subject to subject. At home, they may be easily upset if a promised activity changes, or if, you know, so we'll say, you know, we're going to do this, and then at the last minute we can't. So you need to make up new rules, and, you know, sometimes say, okay, we're not going to do this. We're going to do this. So I'll give you 5 minutes to, you know, kind of reset, you know, and then we can go and do this. Then for goal-directed persistence, at school, they may not stick with the challenging tasks, math in particular. At home, they may be easily distracted by something that is more fun, like video games. So a strategy would be to give responsibility for something like a pet or a chore that has a reward that sticks, helps them stick with it and helps them follow through.
So 2 reminders is that we need consistent routines, and then we need to break down multi-step tasks. This will help with the stress part of people who have executive dysfunction. So you want to make sure that your child knows, and it's hard at times. It's not that it's, especially right now, it's chaotic and everybody's at home and it looks different. But if you can set up routines that everybody can follow, and then you can break the task down so that, and have, I would suggest like a picture schedule, depending on how old, or a written schedule, because stress does impact how we function. And I don't know about you, but when I've cared for somebody who is ill, I seem to make it through the incident and getting and I'm organized and I'm planned and I can figure out what needs to happen. But it's like afterwards, when everything slows down, then my executive functions seem to lack a bit because it has been such a stressful time. So looking at that, we talked a little bit before too about, as adults, we experience some executive dysfunction, maybe not to the level of a disability, but again, we have all of this prior knowledge. And so we oftentimes can take that knowledge and apply it to what's going on, or make decisions based on things that have happened before, where our kiddos don't have that experience. So if you can stop and determine whether or not it's something that you really need to go back and teach them, or that to be that frontal lobe and say, we're going to go back 3 steps and then move forward because they're missing some skills that they need. So if you can do that, it may be helpful. Kids who have serious dysfunction are challenging. Kids with ADHD who are trying to be organized, it's not that they're bad kids. It's just that the way that their brain is functioning is challenging. Again, that doesn't mean that they can't learn some of this stuff, even parts of it. So if we keep in mind that our goal is to help them become independent citizens and to be able to be as independent as possible, some of them will live on their own. Some of them will be in group homes. Some of them will be at home. However it looks, we want them to be as independent as possible, because that's where they're going to find value, and their confidence is going to be built. We all know that kids know that when they can't do something. And so if we can give them some of these strategies to be able to be more organized, to do a little bit better with planning, we are setting them up, as she said in the video, for success. And success looks different for every kiddo. So we just also want to remind you that as you are going through this with your children, that it's not a reflection. It's not a reflection on you. It's where they are at this point in time. Being able to determine which of it is truly just behavioral and which is skill based is a challenge for all parents. But giving yourself, first of all, the grace to know that this is hard, and to do self-care for yourself. I think it was Cindy was talking about mindfulness activities. Whatever you can do to take care of yourself and have yourself centered is going to be helpful for your child, especially in these times when you're at home. And I'll say it again, we're all together all the time. And it's just easy for things to implode, explode. Hopefully these reminders, this was not an in-depth at all on executive functioning skills, just giving you that overview, but hopefully some food for thought for how you can work with your child or children at home. So thanks again for taking time out of your schedules to meet with all of us today. And we hope to see you next month at the same time.